Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for being in community with us tonight. It is a great pleasure. As you may know, I'm Justin Farmer, lead organizer of the Six Lakes Park Coalition. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It is good to be in community with y'all. As I just said, I'm Justin Farmer, lead organizer of the Six Lakes Park Coalition. Forgive me, I am a soft-spoken person, right? Proud son of the sleeping giant, right? So this is our third annual meeting to bring people in community to talk about the vision that is Six Lakes. I want to thank our steering committee members. Just give a wave, raise your hand. Steering committee members, thank you so much. Aaron is manning, personing the Zoom for us, so thank you, thank you. I'm going to introduce the mayor, then go into our agenda, but I would just like to thank Mayor Garrett for being in community with us tonight, as there's so much going on, but we definitely appreciate the presence and the steadfastness of her administration on Six Lakes. So without further ado.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. The work that the Six Lakes Park Coalition is doing is really helping to drive this process, make sure that Six Lakes gets cleaned up, that the public has access to the park. So they've been working pretty closely with DEEP. I appreciate DEEP being here tonight and always being willing to come in and give us updates. It's very generous of you, and we appreciate your cooperation. And I just want to give a quick shout out to the Girl Scouts who are here getting their badge. And getting really a good education about municipal government and the environment. So nice job. So thank you so much to the Six Lakes Park Coalition. You all are doing amazing work. And thank you all for coming here and continuing to be involved and showing that Hamden really does care about Six Lakes and getting it cleaned up and making sure that everyone has access to it. Thank you.
So tonight we'll go on to our agenda. There you go. Tonight we're going to watch the amazing video by Steve Ham on Six Lakes. And so if you've seen it before, you can share with everyone how great it is. And if you haven't seen it before, you can look out for the why do I always the muskrat, right? Look out for the muskrat, right? Extra brownie points. I don't know if action can give extra brownie points, but following that, we'll have the white paper from the Yale Environmental Justice Clinic be presented. Here are some of our student attorneys that have worked on this. So white paper, for those of y'all who are like me, what is a white paper? It is a document to unpack complex issues. And so the students really did a deep dive, historical dive on the history of Six Lakes. How did we get here? Contextualize some of the issues that got us here, and then shared a prescription with us. And for us, that prescription was rooted in how do we encourage and make sure we have community participation in this cleanup effort? What obligations did Olin make? And what are the statutes and laws that DEEP and us can rely on? And so the students will go into all of that. Followed by that, we are thankful to have deep here with us, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. So Ray is here. John, John Duff. I always remember Duff and I'm just like, I can't, yeah. But thank y'all for being in communion with us tonight. They'll be able to answer questions on where we are in the process of the cleanup. And lastly, thank you again to our Girl Scouts as we get into our letter writing phase. Our letter writing will be focused on sending letters to Olin, encouraging them to be in community with us to see this property cleaned up. And then we'll also have posters so that folks can share with us other ideas on how to engage Olin to be more in community with us. So thank you to the Girl Scouts Nettie for the wonderful treats that they've shared with us. And without further ado, look out for the muskrat. The Winchester Olin property, it's a 103-acre parcel of property here in southern Hamden in Newhall. It is an oasis with wildlife and right next to the Farmington Canal. The dream and vision of this property is to have open space, a place that people can be in community, be with nature, and a place that people can come and connect culturally.
I support Olin Powder Farm being turned into a state park. It is just a magnificent piece of property, 100 acres, that is really a very beautiful natural area that is in a very urban setting.
It's an EJ community, environmental justice impacted community, and so you have the aspect of the environment, high asthma rates, lack of access to public spaces, but then you have this property that was polluted, that caused harm, and this is an opportunity to move forward and address what happened in the past and do it in a purposeful way to build and have reciprocity for the future.
The property, called Olin Powder Farm, is fenced off from the public. It belongs to Olin Corporation, owner of Winchester Arms, which operated a gun and ammunition factory in nearby New Haven for more than 100 years. Winchester stored chemicals on the property and dumped industrial waste there.
It was originally used as a location to store gunpowder. There are several bunkers that are remaining on the property. Additional uses of the property was for a gun firing range to actually test weaponry and ammunition. So we have a number of what we call areas of environmental concern on the property that relate to the ammunition use, lead shot into soil. We're also concerned about battery waste, chlorinated solvents, and a host of other metals and some PCBs.
An additional concern is that water flows from the Olin Powder Farm into the Lake Whitney Reservoir. The state and Olin entered a consent decree in the 1980s where Olin agreed to clean up environmental damage, but the project stalled and was only recently restarted. Six Lakes Park Coalition is urging Olin to quickly complete the cleanup and make the land available so it can be turned into a public park.
The Hamden Land Trust was formed in 1969, and one of their main priorities was to see the Olin property preserved as public open space. They tried for many years to work with Olin. It languished for quite a while. In 1990, the Land Trust actually made a deal with Olin to lead public walks there once or twice a year on a Sunday afternoon. There were several sessions where people were led through the property, and they were amazed at the beauty of it, especially in being such a highly urbanized area.
The primary focus at this point for Olin Corporation is that they are focused on the property investigation and ultimately the cleanup. Now, oftentimes the cleanup is in part designed around the end use. So there very much will be a point in time for the community to connect with Olin Corporation to express its desire.
The coalition urges all interested parties to join in the effort to realize the dream of creating a Six Lakes Park by making donations and helping shape the project and push it forward.
Lights back on. And then, so I'll pass it over to our esteemed, co-counsel, no, just.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. We're so excited to be with you to share the white paper, which is the work of a couple of months, and to talk a little bit more about the Environmental Justice Clinic at the Yale Law School. My name is Mario Malangwe. I'm a student attorney with the Environmental Justice Clinic.
You guys just stand a little closer to that microphone because that's what yeah.
And my name is Laura Plata. I'm also a student attorney with the Environmental Justice Clinic.
So just to share a little bit more about the Environmental Justice Clinic, it's housed within the Jerome and Frank Legal Services Organization at Yale Law School, which is a broader organization that allows clinics to provide free legal services to specific groups. So in our case, we're focused on environmental justice and advocacy. So we, in particular, like to provide legal services to community-based organizations, tribal nations, nonprofit coalitions for the specific purpose of advancing environmental justice in different communities and intersectional concerns. So this can include tribal sovereignty, environmental protections, public health, civil rights, and then something like this, which is participatory environmental governance. We prioritize providing legal services for marginalized communities, for underfunded communities, overburdened communities, and we've been really excited to be in partnership with the Six Lakes Park Coalition on this project.
And many student attorneys, past and present, were involved with authoring the white paper, so we'd like to give some recognition to them here tonight. These include Mariana, Morgan Feldenkrais, Danielle Hopkins, who's also here with us tonight, Ryan Orlando, Mariana Nicholas, and Claire Potter, as well as our summer legal intern, Sarah Smith, and of course with contributions from our clinical supervisors, Stephanie Safdie and Jane Jacoby.
And just to point them out, Danielle is in the front here and Steph is in the back, taken away. They're a huge part of this and we're so happy that they're here.
So the Six Lakes Park Coalition is an institution that is made up of community organizations and community groups. So many of them are here today, right? The town is a great partner in this work. If there are any organizations, institutions we should be working with, please feel free to reach out to me, to Kathy, right? We want to be in partnership with, and then we got some of our high school clubs here. Right. Now we're gonna shout out for the youth. So yeah, please reach out, be in community with us. And thank you to all the groups that make this possible. So So, you know, we have to contextualize where we are and why we're here, right? Newhall, like so many other communities across the country, a ton of people from the South moved here, right? From the 50s, 60s, right? Through the Great Migration to come here for better opportunities for their families, right? Whether that be economical, educational, or just to escape Jim Crow. And so as these families move to these communities, Hamden, New Haven, right? Throughout the 1930s, you had the Homeowners Loan Corporation that designated neighborhoods based off of their value on a number of criteria, right? But oftentimes that main criteria was race and ethnicity. And so those communities were rated in different aspects. But red was considered slums, right? Yellow was considered communities that were derelict and headed towards being a slum, right? And that was mostly just because that's where Black and brown people were. And that's how, at the time, our federal government treated community members. That is important because the historical context emphasizes where we are today, the health outcomes, right? If we lay health determinants maps over these maps, if we lay out economic opportunity zones over these maps, if we look at segregation of schools through these maps, those same patterns exist, and where pollution was dumped also follows the designation of these maps. So these maps are very important as we talk about environmental justice. So for historical context, the video went into a great deal about the historical context, but property is 102 acres, right? I got razzed by some high school students a couple of years ago. And so they're like, how many football fields is that? And that's like 70 football fields. So very, very large parcel. But the important thing about this map is that you have the Farmington Canal right here in green on the west side of the property. You can see the gray lines, that is the extensive paved paths and roads on the property. And then in the orange, you have the AOCs, not the congresswoman, but the areas of concern. Each time I tell that joke, for those who've already heard it, I'm sure it loses its edge, but I'm teaching it. So these are some of the chemicals that exist on the site. I'm not going to go into all of them, right? As Ray mentioned, there's some PCBs, the forever chemicals that exist on the site that need to be cleaned up. And when the time comes, right, Deep can answer more to those questions and concerns. But just for those who are interested and want to know what's on the property. So this is from this white paper report. And so while the fence continues to physically separate the community from Six Lakes, Olin and Deep have left the community largely in the dark on the decision-making, oversight, investigation, and remediation timelines for the site cleanup. The state and federal law policy direct otherwise. This is amalgamation of different important dates, times. I'm not gonna go into all of them, but old and brief, 1966. 1966 was when the contamination was first reported to the health department. People were concerned about smoke and odors coming from the property as it was a burn site. And so the town came out and ordered Olin to clean up the site. Following that, there were conversations at the encouragement of Olin with the town to look at potentially purchasing the property. And so in 1979, there was a report about potentially buying the property, and the report was extensive, and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of contamination here. Probably doesn't make the most sense for the town to go through with this deal as it currently is, and much more cleanup needs to happen. In 81 and 83, DEEP, right, the Department of Energy Environmental Protection, at the time it was DEP rather than DEP. But at the time, they ordered a pollution abatement order. We're going to order a pollution abatement order that would require Olin to clean up the property in full. But that could have been a legal challenge, and so they offered the opportunity to sign a consent order, which Olin did in 87. And so that is the framework that we're working with. Olin agreed to these terms, said, yes, we're going to clean up these property back in 1987. We are in the investigation stage of that cleanup, right? They did some cleanup of the batteries, but for the most part, we're still at phase 0, right? We haven't started the actual cleanup that Olin agreed to. In 94, year I was born, right? Six Lakes was kept on the list, considered for national priorities list, also known as Superfund site. And so Olin did not want Six Lakes to be a Superfund site, went to the state, fought it, and we're like, please do not make this a Superfund site. If you make it a Superfund site, it's going to take us longer to clean it up. And so we took them at their word, deprioritized this being a Superfund site. And during 94 and 95, they put out newsletters to the effect of saying, hey, trust us, we're in community. This is going to be a public park or some type of public amenity in the future. And so trust us, you know, this is the best way forward. And yeah, they hosted annual walks twice a year up until 2004. And so in 2000, there was an internal memo from the state deprioritizing Six Lakes. In 2001, the effects of the Newhall neighborhood, this neighborhood, right, Highwood, Newhall, the contamination or dumping built up this neighborhood was unearthed. And so efforts to clean up and have that remediation happen, those efforts ended in 2015, but the 300 homes in the neighborhood of Newhall, right, that were facing water infiltration issues, crumbling foundation or shifting of the earth underneath the houses. There's still 100 homes today that are still affected, right? And so they just got $8 million thanks to organizing of community members within the last month or so, right? And so that is all important. But what's most important is the legal prescription of like, how do we move forward, right? And so I'm gonna pass it back over to our law students to walk us through like, what do we do next and how do we move forward?
Yeah, so we thought it would be great to take some time to explain some of the relevant laws and procedures surrounding the remediation. In particular, these 4 ones here. So you'll see in the white paper, we often mention this term CERCLA, which is the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act. CERCLA is a federal law that governs remediation of certain contaminated sites. It does this in several ways. It empowers the EPA to assess hazardous sites, identify responsible parties, define reporting requirements, and then to designate what's called a Superfund site. So often CERCLA is called the Superfund law. Something that's important to note is that while Six Lakes has not been designated a Superfund site, the consent order that was signed requires that remediation be done according to CERCLA standards. the National Contingency Plan is kind of an accompanying set of implementing regulations that set forth different standards and processes to carry out different federal laws, such as CERCLA. And you'll often see us also mention in the white paper a remedial investigation study, which is something that kind of takes stock and documents the conditions of a particular site that needs to be remediated. It kind of forms a basis for the remediation. It is required by DEEP, the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protections, under the consent order with an accompanying implementation schedule. It's important to note also that Olin never received DEEP's approval for the remedial investigation study that they proposed in '88. And then subsequently, a remedial action plan is based on the remedial investigation study. This is something that's subject to a comment period by the EPA, which is the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. And the remedial action plan outlines the specific activities that are going to occur in order for a site to be remediated, the specific activities that surround remediation in a specific area. So now we're going to move to talk a little bit about, and you'll see in the white paper, we have this entire graphic, so please feel free to refer to it. This is a guide to the public's right, your right to participation in this remediation process. So this is based on the research that we've done, and we're just going to go through and share a little bit about our assessment. So under our assessment, DEEP has a legal duty to engage the public, you all, to prepare a community involvement plan for the remediation, which means a couple of different things. It means that DEEP needs to conduct interviews with different stakeholders about how they'd like to be involved in this process. It means that it also means preparing a formal community involvement plan, which outlines how DEEP's going to engage with the community throughout this remediation. As of October 2025, based on our research, Olin is still in the middle of completing its duty to issue a remedial investigation study, which was, as we just mentioned, was specified in the consent order. And this has to be completed before DEEP and Olin can begin negotiating how to plan and how to execute the remediation in and of itself.
So as Mariama just mentioned, there will be a remedial investigation study, and then once this is complete, there will be something called a remedial action plan, again, which will outline the specific remediation activities that Olin proposes to conduct on the site. One really great aspect of the regulations in relation to this plan are that they require that at every opportunity, that everyone in the community have the opportunity to participate in the process through a public comment period that will be open for 30 days. If you continue to be part of Six Lakes, you can rest assured that you'll continue to be looped in on this process. After this 30-day period, DEEP has a few options it can take in relation to the remedial action plan. Importantly, even if the remedial action plan is approved, public participation does not stop here. Olin must continue to engage the public throughout the remediation as outlined in the community involvement plan.
Thank you. And it was no small feat. It is a 30+ page document. So if you don't have enough reading, definitely take a read. So, where we are now in this process is that last year we released our vision report, which is going to be on the back table. So if you haven't read it, it's there for your review. We talked to over 2,000 community members, got petitions from them, hearing from them the need to see reform, to see this property come to fruition. And we had over 600 community surveys done to tell us what people would like to see on the property, right? Whether that be walking paths, whether that be people having an opportunity to have a space that connects these different communities, right? This straddles the richest communities in our town, the poorest communities, and Whitneyville, right? And this is a space that can bring us all together, a space that has educational opportunities, and really grounds us in supporting our environment and thinking about our future. So To that end, we laid out a roadmap, right? Our hope, goal, expectations, right, is that by next year, we will be in our final phase of testing, barring any, you know, horrific event or, any findings that, would give us pause, right? That will be in our final investigation stage and that Olin will start the cleanup. Our hope and goal in the next year, right, is that Olin will work with us to come up with a plan for ownership, for stewardship, right? And engage the community in a transparent way. And by 2028, we'll have plans laid out that are concrete about how we can transfer the property and have final ownership. In 2029, having this parcel become a public asset that we've been talking about since 1966, right? I have not been talking about it since 1966, but we collectively, the people of Hampden, have been talking about. So with that, I'm gonna move us on to our next section, which is the Q&A from our deep folk, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, just to talk to us about where cleanup is now and sharing other updates. So. Yeah. Oh. Yes, I'm giving it to Sue, I forgot.
I get to introduce Ray and John, Ray Fergone and John Duff. And Ray is the director of the remediation division at the Bureau of Water Protection and Land Reuse. Thank you, sorry. At Connecticut Deep. And John Duff is has the title that he or Ray will tell you, but he's the guy on site who's most familiar with the details of the property. So we look forward to hearing from you and thank you for being here and for agreeing to take some questions after you give your slides.
You can do that. I think I'm short enough that I can put it in the stand. First, I want to say thank you for having us here tonight. My name is John Duff. I work for the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. I'm an environmental analyst that I've been assigned to this site for approximately about the past 5 years. I'm going to show a quick PowerPoint presentation, and it's really going to be quick. It's more or less dealing with where we are in the current investigation and giving some explanation as to why there's been a little bit of a delay this year. Go ahead, next slide. So here is the first slide is basically aerial photograph of Pine Swamp. You guys know it's a 102-acre piece of parcel, 50% is approximately covered by water. Next slide. So going back to the investigation, it's a multiple phase process. Like we indicated, it's a 102-acre property. There's multiple areas of concern. Off the top of my head, I'm just going to estimate that there's at least 50 to 60 areas that need to be properly investigated to determine whether or not there's any contamination existing or whether certain areas can be ruled out. So when I first became involved with the property, I was in communication with Olin. We, instead of starting from scratch, it's been on pause for a while. So what we had them do was go through all their historic documentation so that we at least had a start of where to look for the contamination that's on the property. They've done that. They've done their first round of investigative work, which we did a presentation last year with some of their findings. But as far as the investigations go, I'm going to say if many of you have played the game of Battleship, it's very much like that. It's that you're taking samples from certain locations and it's kind of hit or miss based on laboratory data and feedback. So how the investigation works is once you get some hits, in order to come up with a proper remedial action plan, you really want to get the full scope and magnitude of what's actually on the site. So that's where the multiple phases come in. So as far as like the 2025 schedule, we approved that second phase back in December of 2024. And basically, this is what the 2025 schedule was. So Olin was supposed to, in December, between December and February, do their planning activities. March, do their initiate on-site investigative activities. They expected by May to do groundwater testing. August, we were supposed to get the drafts report, and then truthfully, we were supposed to have the final report as of this time. So unfortunately, you go to the next slide. Unfortunately, the spring was unusually wet. If you guys do know the Pine Swamp property, there's a lot of steep slopes, not much roadway in there. And in order to do the investigative work, you have to bring in a lot of heavy machinery. So because of the above average precipitation in early 2025, the wet conditions prevented Olin from actually being able to perform at least some of their investigative work. So you can go to the next slide. So Olin approached the department back in April of 2025, letting us know that many of the areas that they're looking to perform further investigative work were underwater, or they just couldn't get to it because of, the wet conditions. They requested that they were able to provide or perform the additional work that they couldn't earlier in August and September, in which they did do. They did report that they were able to get that done. So they requested to us that because they couldn't get it done, that they're looking to extend the submission of their findings for this next phase to December of 2025. So we're looking at like a 2-month delay. We felt that based on the wet conditions, they really couldn't collect the information that they were supposed to. So therefore, 2 months we felt was not an unreasonable ask in this situation. So what was the result of this 2-month delay? Okay, we have 2 months until we get the final phase or the final report for this phase. But in actuality, you can say that because they did some investigative work back in April, they were able to get a laboratory turnaround on some of that work. And like I said, with like the game of Battleship, you have some hits, have some misses, and then you have to kind of determine where do we go next. So they're able to actually do some additional investigative work because of this 2-month delay. So that's something we can kind of put in. So that they don't have to wait until the next phase to actually collect the work. So again, I just want to give you guys a reminder that this is a large piece of property. It's very complex. It's got many areas of concern. So in order to fully understand the site, many phases got to be performed. So, and again, to develop an appropriate remedial action, additional phases are just going to have to be done. And that's I'm going to say that's pretty much the reason for the 2-month delay for this year. At this time, I think I'm going to hand it over to Ray to be able to answer any additional questions and comments. Thank you.
All right, I think I'll hold the microphone. So I want to speak a little bit about the 2-month delay. And as our law students are aware, the consent order entered between Olin and Connecticut Deep is a binding contract. So when Olin approached Deep requesting that 2-month delay, we pondered what are the consequences of forcing Olin to move forward. consequences potentially could be resulting in significant erosion on the site, which could mobilize contaminants in soil, thereby leading the soil to be washed into the ponds. We did not want that to happen. Likewise, if we pushed Olin to perform that work during that wet season, Olin could potentially have said, well, Deep, you're being arbitrary in this, and that's not reasonable. Our workers may be at risk. We may be exacerbating the pollution. So potentially that could have landed us in court, probably a rarity, but it was a possibility. In which case a judge could potentially have found that Deep was being arbitrary, a little heavy-handed. So we do have to be somewhat careful and weigh the pros and the cons. In this situation, we determined that a 2-month delay, I understand the community is extremely sensitive to delays. So are we. I know that's an understatement about delays. In this particular case, the 2 months was, in our opinion, very much necessary and worth it. Happy to take questions. Yes, sir.
I understand what you're saying about the delays in the library law. I believe there's way too much red tape in everything. I'm a boots up and touch ground type of guy. I get my butt out there and I clean up the lower end and dig swell. I do a lot of work. One guy. I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm sure there's other residents around here to step up to the plate. Because right now our town is struggling. But what I see over 40 years, well, there's so many different formations of more people in the top essence of all this chaos for collecting funds or finance and draining from finance rather than getting boots on the ground. People are afraid to step on people, to get people motivated, to get things done. I mean, building a coalition to tackle something, it's all about doing the right thing. I challenge each person each day, get up, do the right thing. When you go to your offices and you push around papers and you go to these meetings, but at the end of the day, and we're looking at it here 40 years later, we're still scratching our heads. And now you're kind of trying to show us that you care. But rightfully so, I don't actually believe that. Because so much could have been done by now. We have people living in New Hall, which I don't even know how many people we have here from New Hall, that are affected by houses that are cracked because of this whole coalition. There's houses that need to be torn down because the first remediation process. There's places that are flooding, and everybody else is up on the upper ends. We're all pushing around paper, all pushing around blame. At what point we start to stop that and get your boots on the ground and stop going to your offices and stop holding these meetings? Well, I've been to a lot of them and for years. And guess what? We're at zero. And now we're talking about 28, 29, we're going to possibly start seeing something. And with the amount of pollution that I see people putting out on the street sites, I'd be kind of afraid to open that place up for public use. Because I can't keep up with the trash with the areas that we have now. So, I mean, there's a lot of different skepticisms about this whole program that I believe that you on the top end need to start handing us back some of them and not having more town hall meetings at ground zero. That's it.
I'd just like to take a moment to respond. So I'm not going to ask you to believe everything that John and I are telling you. And that's fine. Trust needs to be built, needs to be earned, and we intend to do that. We are the buck stops here kind of people. I think what may be helpful is to give a little insight as to who we are at Connecticut Deep. We are you. We live in the state. We play in the state. We work in the state. And we're dedicated to our jobs. We are a group of 40 people in the remediation division. And I will tell you, you will not find a more dedicated group of government officials working for the citizens, for the environment. You will not find a better team than remediation division at DEEP. I will guarantee you that. So why is this project taking decades to complete? It's a very fair question. To answer that, and I'll try to be brief here, because there's so much I do want to say, but I'll try to stick to the essence. Remediation division is a group of 40 people, 40 people to cover the entire state of Connecticut. Tens of thousands of polluted properties in our state. We have no choice but to triage, much like, I use this analogy quite often. We are like doctors in an emergency room. Quite often, when a patient comes in, the patient has a broken leg, as serious as that may be. We have to pivot to the patient coming in that's suffering from a severe heart attack, something that is immediately life-threatening. So I'm not trying to equate our analysts and engineers to doctors. That's not what I'm trying to do. But to give you a sense as to all the things that we are working on. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm just looking to explain, to achieve a little bit of understanding, I suppose. That's all. Yes, ma'am.
Agree with your analogy, and I agree with the gentleman back here because, it's like, it's very complicated, you guys are understaffed. But what I don't see is anyone getting up and saying, this has to be done by a certain time. We need more money, we need more staff, we need enough organization. And nobody talks about, we have to do the whole in one time. If they don't get it done by a certain time, then they have to start paying whatever. I don't know what they pay or how much they pay. But when I saw the outline from last year, I wasn't able to come to this meeting last year, but I was just like, same thing? And they're still doing the same thing and they expect us, not you, not your department, but someone is expecting us to put up with this. So I don't know whether we need, we the citizens have to take things into our own hands. But it's like next year at this time, we're gonna be sitting here having you guys tell us why Olin can't do this and why Olin can't do that. I mean, we're never gonna get there. Okay?
I disagree. And I'll tell you why. I appreciate your sentiment. I truly do. If I didn't work for DEEP, I was sitting in this audience, I'd probably have the same reactions that you folks are having. Like, damn it, DEEP, you've had decades. You issued this consent order. You didn't follow through on it. Again, I'm not trying to make excuses. Not, honestly. But let me just explain where we're at now. So in '86, when the consent order was issued, Olin did do some investigation, and they did tackle some of the worst areas of environmental concern. So yes, some cleanup was conducted, but it wasn't completed. At the time that investigation was done, late '80s, the state of technology with respect to environmental laboratory equipment was only so good. I'm not trying to say that this is a benefit of a delay, but I will say that today we have technological advances that are just amazing. We can speed up that process to do the analysis. We've got much better resolution, meaning we can see contaminant levels much lower than we could decades ago. What we also have is environmental cleanup standards that didn't exist at the time that the consent order was issued. We have them now. They're not specifically worded into the consent order, but Olin knows by default, we've informed them, you need to meet today's standards, not the 1986 standards. Today's standards are way more stringent. So you probably could have gotten away with a much cheaper cleanup and investigation had you done it years ago. To today's standards, it'll be much more detailed, and I would submit that it's going to be more protective of human health and the environment because of that. Yes, Kathy.
I do want to move us along to our letter writing action for tonight, but I have a specific question for you, which is that I saw on the calendar that John was going through with us a final report date of December, but it's my understanding that the original, there was a draft due in August that, as you're saying, didn't come in, that was to have been due last week. And that when you received it, you needed the time to go through it and tell them what to update, tweak, whatever, fix, so that the final report would be ready in mid-December. Did you receive that? Maybe I'm wrong about the deadline, so correct me if I'm wrong, but if not, did you receive that draft test report from Olin last week?
I'm going to say no, we have not yet received that draft test report from Olin Corporation. We will certainly be in touch with Olin, and we can provide an update to coalition members as early as tomorrow.
So I can imagine that's our concern. That sounds like another delay. And we would like for that to not happen.
Fully understood. Yes, ma'am.
Does Olin take this seriously? It seemingly hasn't for a long time. It has money. It has time to throw both at. It can't help spring floods, but it can do a lot that it seemingly has not done.
So if you didn't all hear it, just to paraphrase, Olin, they've got the financial resources. Are they not committed to this project? Is certainly a sentiment that I think it's a plausible argument to make, in my opinion. Olin signed on to that consent order, and by virtue of its name, consent order, they're entering into that agreement willingly. So they started performing some of that environmental investigation and cleanup work in the mid to late 80s. I can't speak to exactly why things fell apart at that point in time. We do have staff members that move on, retire, unfortunately pass away. So yes, things happen. And also going back to my earlier analogy, other sites do tend to kind of push their way in and take over deep resources. For example, it was early 90s, the Raymark Federal Superfund site in Stratford was identified. And unfortunately, that did take the lion's share of our resources in the division at that point in time to focus on that project. And then it was in 2004 or thereabouts, I was actually working with Olin on Pine Swamp to get them to restart activities, got them back to the table. And that's around the time where the issues in the Newhall neighborhood were identified. And again, it was another situation where we have to put down our resources here because we just don't have enough resources to spread around. And we have to focus our time and attention on the neighborhood, because that was a situation where there was imminent risks, ongoing risks that people in their backyards. So that was appropriate for the agency to do at that time. And it was 2013, 2014, where we concluded the neighborhood cleanup, and we told Olin, we're going back to Pine Swamp. I actually left the division for a little while, came back. It was around 2018, 2019. We re-engaged a conversation with Olin and said, you're coming back to the Newhall area neighborhood. You were working on Pine Swamp. And we pushed and pushed. They did muster the cash. It's a worldwide company. I'm not trying to make excuses for them.
$8 billion annually.
Yeah, a lot of money. And they also have a lot of responsibility across the world. Connecticut, little old Connecticut, we have our fair share of issues that Olin's responsible for. And we said, you need to come back to Connecticut. They did secure the funding for this environmental investigation. And I would say that we have a very good working relationship with Olin, and we can speak frankly with them. If they're not moving hastily enough, we will certainly prod them. We have that consent order to essentially bring to court to uphold their responsibility if we need to.
The Girl Scouts.
Last question, the young ladies in the back. I heard the second question. I'll have to, how about I address the second question quickly and we'll go back to the first question just for a moment. So is Olin actually working right now? They actually are. They're doing the environmental investigation work. So that's the first step, as John was explaining, toward completing an appropriate environmental cleanup. So understanding exactly where pollutants are vertically and horizontally to understand, we can't just see through the soil. We have to do testing. So it's a very time consuming, challenging process. But it's an extremely important step so that we actually perform the cleanup the first time the right way. And it's done properly and we don't have to go back. Oh, well, that's a great question. The cleanup standards. So Connecticut Deep has a standard for every conceivable contaminant that you could find in soil, groundwater, or surface water. And it prescribes what the appropriate cleanup criteria is for each specific contaminant. So Olin, the directive from Deep to Olin is clean up your mess to the Connecticut standards, which are inherently safe for people to enjoy that property in the future, and also for the frogs and the fish and all the critters that live out there. Muskrats.
This is 29.
If I could paraphrase the question, 2029, making it a park, is that possible? Is that essentially your question? Or can we make it earlier? Wow. I would say study environmental sciences in school and join our team because we need more folks like you. Can we make it earlier? That is such a challenging quest to actually achieve environmental cleanup in just a couple of years requires everything to be in alignment. Unfortunately, this is a property that has multiple areas of environmental concern, all spread over 100+ acres in the woods and very challenging terrain. So it becomes extremely challenging to investigate to evaluate where each type of pollutant is actually located, to define that, and then to come up with the remedial plan, discuss that plan with the public, and then have Olin implement that plan. So unfortunately, it is a painstaking, several years long type process. Unfortunately, it'd be situations where we had a point source release, somebody knocked over a can or a drum of pollution. I'm seeing it, I know what the material is, and I can tell how far it spread. That's an easy case. In those situations, we can have those types of matters cleaned up in hours to days, not years like what we're talking about in this situation. I'm sensing that we are at time. John and I are happy to stick around and answer any additional questions folks may have. Thank you.
Before passing it to Kathy to get y'all kicked off on writing letters to Olin, as I mentioned, this is our third annual meeting. We did invite Olin. Olin, is anyone here from Olin to speak? Okay, so we are going to be writing letters to Olin. Kathy will tell you about that, but I just wanted to acknowledge Representative Winter, who joined us. So we appreciate you and your support, and I doubt. I'll pass it to Kathy.
All right, thank you. So, great questions. Thanks, everybody, for turning out tonight. I just have some like kind of housekeeping stuff to explain to you, and then we're gonna get some action going here. So, first of all, the white paper itself, Justin mentioned, is 34 pages long. We'd really like to give a round of applause to the students from the Yale Law Clinic for their hard work and their advisors. It's a fantastic document. I learned a few things from it, but obviously I've been, deeply involved in this for a while. And I will tell you that when I read that document, it made me angry. Even though I knew almost everything that was in it, seeing it all put together and reading the history from beginning to end was really enlightening. And it's also going to serve as a great tool for us going forward in order to be able to follow. Now we're really clear on what the letter of the law tells us has to happen. So we really thank you guys for all your hard work and all the students who aren't here tonight as well. So the white paper, you got a one-pager when you came in the door, but the white paper itself, we don't have enough hard copies to share around, but it will be posted on the Six Lakes Park website, sixlakespark.org tomorrow. So if anybody wants to do some heavy reading over the weekend, it will be there for you. How can you get involved in this action? We have our email sign up list at the front door there. We love new volunteers. We thank our volunteers who are here tonight. They're going to be facilitating letter writing in a few minutes here at the door. Checking you in today. We really appreciate their help. And basically anybody who's got a Six Lakes Park Coalition t-shirt on is a volunteer here tonight. And you can ask them questions as well. So we are writing letters tonight to Olin's leadership. The letters will be addressed to them. And we will also be sending copies to DEEP so that they will be able to see what we've sent to Olin. And we have a template for you to follow, but you are welcome to write whatever you want. We're going to ask you to handwrite your letters tonight and leave them with your table facilitator, because sending a pile of handwritten letters has much bigger impact than you filling out an online letter on a software platform. However, if you are one of the people who's listening in on the webinar online, or if you want to pass the word along to some other people, there will also be a link starting tomorrow on our website for you to do just that. And I think you're going to put it in the chat for the folks in the webinar, right? So you will be able to write a letter electronically. Not you, we want you to stick around tonight and do it in hard copy, but other people will be able to do it electronically as well. We also, when you're finished writing your letter, and your table facilitator will help you with any questions you have, we would like you to take one or two, no more, up to 2 little stickies and bring them over here and vote on what you think the next steps should be for the Six Lakes Park Coalition. We've got a whole bunch of suggestions on the posters here. I'm not going to take the time to read them all to you. You can do that yourselves. Come over and read what the options are and put your vote, stick your stickies on there to vote for your top two choices. The very last poster says other ideas. So if you have a write-in idea, please write it in for us. And that will help the steering committee of the Six Lakes Park Coalition craft our plans for 2026. Finally, thank you to Hamden Girl Scout Troop 60419. Come down tonight. I heard the chocolate chip cookies on the table over there are amazing, and I bet there are not 75 of them. So you might want to, make a stop over at the table first. And please stick around a little bit, have fellowship with your neighbor. Sue's got an announcement.
Just want to say that I